Yes.
In the economy of God, blessings, deliverance, and salvation and preservation often come at the hands of those who we once persecuted, lied on, maligned, and denigrated. There's somebody that stabbed you in the back whose blessings you're working on now, and there's somebody who you stabbed in the back who worked towards your blessings now.
Yes.
That's the cycle of things, and we don't always look at that. We don't want to consider the idea that we're supposed to pray for those that spitefully use us, love our neighbors, pray for your enemies. All that stuff doesn't make any sense to us. It doesn't look like it. But he's trying to tell you, I'm trying to do good in the world. This is how you participate in that. And if you decide to walk in that, you will find fulfillment beyond that what you think you lost.
Yes.
God looks for his disciples to be vessels through which the good he desires to do in the earth be made manifest. This is not always or even often apparently conducive to our happiness, to our needs, to our wants. But believers are not in God for personal benefit. We benefit because we are in God.
Yes.
I'm not in God for the blessings. I'm not in God for the fishes and loaves, but I will get fishes and loaves because I'm with God at the time he hands them out.
Yes.
Believers are not in God for personal happiness, but we ought to be happy because we're in God.
Yes.
The distinction lay in understanding who is the central character of the narrative. Does God's world revolve around my happiness, or does my happiness revolve around God's world?
Right. Right.
Consider this. Lord's Prayer. Most of us can quote it. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. All right, let's stop there. Before we get to give us this day our daily bread, there is thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. The prayer of the disciple is first and foremost for the will of God. Before I get to asking God for anything about myself, my main concern, my first desire, my earnest desire is to see the goodness of God manifest throughout this world. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Before I ask for my daily bread, before I ask for forgiveness of debts, before I ask for large territories, bigger building funds, a wife with good hair or a husband with a good job, the will of God is to be the first request of disciples of Christ.
Yes. Yes.
The disconnect between the goodness of God and the goodness of man has resulted in the church establishments, humanity, and believers twisting ourselves in knots trying to figure out how is this going to benefit me. It ain't about you.
No.
I'm sorry. Maybe you want it to be about you because everybody has told you that everything is supposed to be about you, and everybody has told you that personal happiness, personal gain. There is a greater good.
Yes.
God is working towards the greater good, and sometimes that's going to make you happy. Sometimes it might conflict with your notions of happiness, but God is working towards something that is bigger than you and me. And we know, we try to resolve the dissonance of a good God that doesn't step in when we have personal tragedies, collective travesties, and existential threats to our well-being by believing at some point in time this is going to benefit me. Somewhere along the line, I'm going to have a comeback, I'm going to have a breakthrough, I'm going to get double for my trouble, I'm going to understand it better by and by, and then I'm going to be able to shout because of everything that God did for me. He intended it all for my good. That's not the story of Scripture. I'm sorry, that's the story of the church narrative, which in this case, hopefully you'll get what I'm saying. This is not about our benefit. Yeah. I'm not doing this for my own good. I'm not here week after week. I love y'all. We could go to the movie. We could hang out. I'm not doing this for my good, but there is a good God is doing that he's called me to participate in, and I'm trying to be part of that greater good. I assume you're trying to be part of that greater good, and that is where his concern is, and it ought to be where we look.
Yes, yes.
And we know that all things work together for the good to them that love the Lord, to those who are called according to his purpose. Not for the good of them, but for the good to them. All things work together. God's got a good that he's doing that nobody's going to stop.
Right.
It doesn't matter who gets elected. It doesn't matter who doesn't like me. It doesn't matter what nations may decide to do. God has a plan that he is executing on this earth, and nothing in the world is going to stop it. And those of us who love the Lord know that all things work together to his good.
Yes, yes.
Paul understands that in the final analysis, God's goodness will emerge triumphant over all things that have transpired on the earth since the fall of man, and the cacophony of man's imaginative free will and dominion upon the earth will not stop the good God is doing. Those who love God are called